You are dead to this family, Serena. Get out of Savannah and never come back. We don't want your kind here.
When I turned into the riverfront lot and saw my uniform scattered across the wet pavement like roadkill, I still had the sharp smell of freezer fuel and cardboard dust clinging to my skin. My father was standing under the restaurant sign with a microphone in his hand, and my mother was painting one word across my suitcase as if she were labeling trash. My name is Serena Holloway. I am 31 years old. And the night my family threw me out, the whole block was invited to watch. I had just finished a brutal shift managing a refrigeration delay for a medical shipment outside Savannah. My shoulders ached. My eyes burned. All I wanted was a shower, silence, and maybe 10 minutes alone before sleep. Instead, I stepped out of my truck and felt the world go still. My work jackets were heaped beside the curb. My boots lay on their sides in a puddle. A box of old certificates had burst open, and paper curled against the concrete under the damp night air. One frame was cracked clean through the middle. My laptop stand was bent. A duffel bag had been ripped open so hard that my clothes spilled across the parking lines in soft, humiliating little piles. Then my father lifted the microphone. "Everyone listen up," Victor Holloway shouted, his voice booming across the lot. "Tonight we are finally cutting off our deadbeat daughter." A few diners were still leaving the restaurant. 2 teenagers slowed beside the sidewalk. Someone across the street stopped and raised a phone. My mother, Paula, did not look at me. She dragged her brush across my suitcase in thick white strokes and wrote "parasite" like it was a verdict. My younger sister Nina stood near the hostess stand, filming everything with her camera held high, her mouth twisted in that bright cruel smile people wear when they think the crowd is on their side. Then came the line they had rehearsed. "She owes us $22,000, my father barked. "She has lived off this family for years." The words hit harder than the microphone ever could have. Not because they were true, but because they were designed to sound true. Loud. Simple. Public. A lie polished until it gleamed. I did not scream. I did not beg. I stood there long enough to understand exactly what this was. Not anger. Not a family fight. A performance. A punishment staged under restaurant lights so the town could watch me be reduced. Inside my chest, something hot and wild rose up, then froze solid. I bent down and started gathering what had not been destroyed. My father laughed into the microphone. My mother kept painting. Nina narrated to her viewers in a bright sugary voice that made my stomach turn. "Look at her now," she said. Still pretending she did nothing wrong. But my hand stayed steady. That was what they never understood about me. They thought silence meant weakness. They thought composure meant defeat. They thought because I did not slam doors or throw plates or cry on cue, I had no power. What they had mistaken for passivity was discipline. What they had called coldness was control. I had built my career solving disasters while other people panicked. I knew how to think inside chaos. I knew how to remember details. I knew how to keep records. And suddenly, beneath the humiliation, another feeling stirred. Not helplessness. Recognition. I saw the camera in Nina's hand. I heard the exact number my father shouted into the night. I saw my mother defacing my belongings in front of witnesses. They thought they were burying me in public. What they were really doing was creating evidence. I loaded the last box into my truck and reached for a small wooden case that had rolled beneath my tire. My breath caught. It was open. Empty. My grandmother's chain was gone. For 1 second, the pain cracked through me so sharply I almost folded. That chain was the only thing she had left me before she died. Not expensive. Not flashy. Just hers. Just mine. And now it was gone. I looked up at my family. My father was flushed with triumph. My mother's mouth was hard and satisfied. Nina kept filming, hungry for the next reaction. I gave them none. "This is not over," I said quietly. They laughed. All three of them. My father so hard he had to lower the microphone. My mother with open contempt. Nina like this was the funniest thing she had ever streamed. Maybe to them, I looked like a woman with nowhere to go. They were wrong. That night I drove away with my whole life packed into the back of my truck. And somewhere between the dark river road and the 24-hour gas station where I finally parked, the shame inside me changed shape. By the time dawn touched the windshield, I was no longer asking how my family could do this to me. I was asking how much they were about to regret doing it in front of a camera. By sunrise, I was sitting in the front seat of my truck behind a 24-hour gas station, wrapped in my own coat like a stranger borrowing warmth from herself. My neck was stiff. My eyes felt full of sand. Every time I blinked, I saw the white paint on my suitcase and heard my father's voice rolling across the restaurant lot like a judge reading out a sentence he had waited years to deliver. I should have been crying. Maybe some part of me was. But what I felt most was a strange, hollow clarity. The kind that comes after something breaks so completely there is no point pretending it can still be saved. When the sky began to pale, I drove to a roadside motel off the highway and paid for one night in cash. The room smelled faintly of old detergent and air conditioning filters that had not been cleaned in years. I locked the door, set my boxes against the wall, and stood there in the middle of the room without moving. My whole life looked smaller indoors. A torn duffel bag. 2 paint-stained suitcases. A cracked frame. A stack of logistics manuals. A coffee tin full of receipts. 1 bent laptop stand. 3 uniform shirts half hanging from an open carton. It looked less like a life than the remains of one. That was when I opened Nina's livestream. She had not posted it secretly. She had posted it proudly. There I was, frozen under the restaurant lights while she swept the camera over my things like a tour guide showing off a wreck. My mother appeared in close-up, her hand dragging white paint across my luggage with calm, deliberate strokes. My father lifted the microphone and shouted that I owed them $22,000. In the comments, strangers laughed. Some called me lazy. Some called me spoiled. Some said my parents were brave for finally throwing out a grown daughter who had been leeching off the family. I watched the whole thing once. Then I watched it again without sound. That second time, I did not see humiliation. I saw structure. I saw Nina keeping the camera steady. I saw the restaurant sign and frame. I saw my mother writing on property that belonged to me. I saw my father repeat the same accusation clearly, loudly, publicly. I saw witnesses turning their heads. I saw customers lingering near the sidewalk. I saw exactly what they had handed me while believing they were taking everything away. Proof. My hands were shaking when I reached for my phone, but my voice was steady when Chloe Mercer answered on the second ring. "Serena," she said, already alert. What happened? I told her everything. Not dramatically. Not all at once. Just the facts, laid down one by one like boxes on a warehouse floor. The microphone. The paint. The livestream. The money. The missing chain. The lies. Chloe did not interrupt. She did not ask what I had done to provoke them. She did not sigh and tell me family was complicated. When I finished, there was a short silence on the line, the kind that feels less like hesitation and more like someone loading a weapon. "Save everything," she said. "Every post. Every text. Every transfer. Every voicemail. Do not delete a single thing." Something inside me eased at the sound of her voice. Chloe had been my closest friend since community college, long before she became a community reporter with a talent for hearing the truth beneath polished lies. She knew the difference between drama and evidence. More importantly, she knew me. She knew that if I said my family had planned this, then they had planned it. By noon she was knocking on my motel door with 2 iced coffees, packing tape, file folders, and the kind of anger that stayed quiet because it was too focused to waste itself. "You are not crazy," she said the moment I let her in. And you are not the villain in their version of this story. I nearly broke then. Not because of the words themselves, but because they were the first kind words I had heard since the night before. My throat tightened. I turned away under the pretense of reaching for a chair. Chloe noticed and pretended not to. We spent the next 3 hours building a timeline. I pulled up bank statements, Venmo transfers, email chains, photos of invoices my father had sent me with urgent captions about supplier delays and broken equipment. Messages from my mother asking for help with payroll, with utility arrears, with Nina's tuition for a hospitality certificate program she swore would help the restaurant grow. Every request had come dressed as family need. Every payment had gone out quietly, without thanks, without witnesses. The total passed $22,000 before we were halfway through. Chloe sat back slowly. So that is the number, she said. I looked up. What, that is not a random accusation, Serena. That is your money. He shouted your own total into a microphone and flipped it around on you. The room went completely still. For a moment, even the hum of the motel air conditioner seemed to fade. I stared at the spreadsheet on my laptop, at the dates and memo lines and amounts. Seafood supplier. Emergency freezer repair. City tax payment. Nina tuition gap. Insurance shortfall. Vendor deposit. He had not picked a number out of anger. He had picked a number he knew would sound official because it came from me. A chill moved through me so sharply I had to sit down. That was the moment the story changed. Until then, I had thought my family wanted to humiliate me. Now I understood something worse. They had studied me. Counted on my silence. Used my reliability as a weapon against me. They knew I kept records. They knew I would pay when things got desperate. They knew the town would believe the louder voice first. Chloe leaned forward, her eyes hard with focus. This is bigger than a family blow-up, she said. This is a paper trail. I looked around the motel room at the boxes, the bent metal, the white paint drying on my suitcase like a scar. Last night I had left my family's parking lot feeling discarded. By afternoon, I understood I had not been thrown away because I was worthless. I had been thrown away because I knew too much. And for the first time since I watched my life spread across that pavement, I felt something rise stronger than shame. Leverage. 2 days later, Chloe walked me into her brother's office with a cardboard file box on my lap and a pulse that would not slow down. Elias Mercer did not look like the kind of man people hired for dramatic courtroom miracles. He looked worse. Calm. Precise. The kind of calm that made other people hear themselves more clearly than they wanted to. His office was neat without being cold, all dark shelves, framed credentials, and one brass desk lamp that threw a clean pool of light across the stack of records I had carried in like evidence from a fire. He did not begin with sympathy. He began with facts. Show me the video, he said. So I did. He watched Nina's livestream once without reacting. Then he watched the section with my father shouting the amount again. Then he set the phone down, folded his hands, and asked for every document tied to the money my family claimed I owed. I gave him bank statements, screenshots, payment confirmations, forwarded invoices, and email threads that stretched back years. At first, I felt embarrassed by how much I had saved. By how thoroughly I had documented a family that never documented love, only need. But Elias did not treat my habits like paranoia. He treated them like structure. Good, he said quietly, scanning another page. Very good. No one had called anything about this situation good, and the word startled me more than it should have. He spent nearly an hour sorting the records into neat piles. Payments to restaurant vendors. Emergency utilities. Tuition support for Nina. Insurance catch-up. Equipment repair. He wrote short notes in the margins, underlined dates, circled repeated language. Temporary. Urgent. Do not tell your father yet. I will explain later. He read those messages the way a forensic analyst reads cracks in glass. Finally, he leaned back in his chair. "Your father made one mistake," he said. "He used a number that can be tracked. That means this is no longer a story about feelings. It is now a story about records." I should have felt relieved. Instead, I felt my stomach knot tighter. Because if the truth was this organized, then the betrayal had been organized too. Elias asked for access to the email address I had used most often with the family business. I gave it to him. He searched terms I would never have thought to search. Permit. Insurance. Renewal. Signature. Sponsorship. Application. Then he stopped. His face did not change much, but something in the room did. "Serena," he said, "I need you to look at this carefully." He turned the screen toward me. At the top was a financing application for a restaurant expansion loan filed 9 months earlier. Holloway Coastal Kitchen. Proposed outdoor renovation. Equipment upgrade. Revised storage wing. Under business support contact, my name appeared in black print. Under guarantor review correspondence, my email address. Beneath that, a digital signature field carrying a version of my name I had never authorized. For a second I could not breathe. "That is not mine," I said. "I know," he replied. He opened another document. A liability insurance update listing me as a secondary responsible party connected to operational oversight. Then another. A brochure draft for a local waterfront scholarship fund thanking the Holloway family and Serena Holloway for community support and future sponsorship commitment. I stared at the page until the letters blurred. "I never agreed to that." Elias nodded once. "I believe you." That simple sentence hit with more force than panic ever could. The room seemed to tilt backward through time. Suddenly, I remembered counting notices landing in my inbox that I had ignored because I assumed my father had typed my email by mistake. I remembered my mother telling me the restaurant needed to look stronger on paper for one more season. I remembered Nina saying the family name looked better when it sounded united. At the time, those moments had felt irritating, vague, forgettable. Now they snapped together like teeth in a trap. They had not just lied about me in public. They had been using me in private. Chloe swore under her breath from the corner of the room. Elias remained still, but his voice sharpened. "This moves us into a different category," he said. "Defamation is one track. Possible identity misuse is another. Financial misrepresentation may be another. I am not saying we know everything yet. I am saying this is bigger than humiliation." I sat very straight in the chair because it was the only way to stop myself from shaking. Part of me still wanted this to shrink. To become one ugly family spectacle, one drunken overreaction, one terrible night that could be explained by resentment and pride. But documents do not scream by accident. Signatures do not wander onto loan papers by misunderstanding. Names do not appear in sponsorship materials because of stress. This had layers. And every layer had my name buried in it. Elias slid a yellow legal pad toward me and began outlining the next steps. Preserve evidence. Send formal notice. Demand removal of defamatory content. Request full accounting of funds received from me. Freeze informal communication. Pull every filing linked to the business and compare against verified signatures. Document the missing chain but do not center it yet. Emotional value matters. Legal leverage requires sequence. He said all this in the same steady tone a surgeon might use while listing instruments. It should have terrified me. Instead, it gave my fear edges. And once fear has edges, it can be handled. Then he stopped and looked at me directly. "I need to ask you something before I move forward," he said. "If I send letters and start making inquiries, your family may lose more than face. Loans can freeze. Community ties can fracture. Business relationships can shift. Once this begins, you do not get to call it a misunderstanding and make it all disappear. Are you ready for that? The question settled heavily between us. Images flashed through me with brutal speed. My father teaching me how to tie fishing line on the pier when I was 9. My mother rubbing my shoulders before school concerts. Nina asleep against me during summer storms. Then those memories split open and the newer ones poured through them. The microphone. The paint. The laughter. The livestream. My name on papers I had never signed. Families teach you the language of belonging before they teach you the cost of betrayal. That is why it hurts so deeply when the people who know your softest places are the ones pressing hardest on the bruise. I lowered my eyes to the loan application again. My false signature sat there like a stranger wearing my face. When I finally spoke, my voice was low, but it did not waver. Yes, I said. I am ready. Elias nodded as if he had expected nothing else. He reached for his pen and began drafting the first formal notice. While he wrote, I sat in that quiet office and felt the last illusion die. My family had spent years treating me like the extra pair of hands. The dependable daughter. The one who would cover the gap, swallow the insult, carry the weight, and stay grateful for being allowed to serve. They had mistaken my loyalty for obedience. My restraint for weakness. My silence for consent. Now, for the first time, someone was translating my pain into consequence. And somewhere deep beneath the grief, something colder and stronger took hold. They had not thrown out the weakest person in the family. They had thrown out the one person who kept receipts. My family answered Elias's first letter the way people answer smoke when they still believe the fire is small. With arrogance. My mother posted a long message on Facebook about children who weaponize therapy language to avoid responsibility. My father shared it with a caption about sacrifice, loyalty, and how parents are never repaid for what they give. Nina clipped pieces of the livestream into shorter videos and reposted them with laughing comments, as if public humiliation were not a wound but a brand strategy. For a few hours, it worked. People who barely knew us rushed in with opinions. Distant relatives emerged from nowhere to preach about blood and forgiveness. Old customers from the restaurant typed vague lines about how hard small business owners work and how ungrateful younger people can be. The lie moved fast because lies always do when they are simple enough to fit inside someone else's prejudice. But truth has a different kind of speed. It starts slow. Quiet. Methodical. Then, once it finds the right pressure point, everything shifts at once. Chloe was the first to see where that pressure point might be. My mother, Paula Holloway, was still listed as one of the public faces of the Harbor Futures Gala, a glossy fundraiser tied to scholarship grants, waterfront restoration, and the kind of polished community image people in Savannah protected with clenched teeth and perfect smiles. She was supposed to greet donors, speak about family values, and stand under chandeliers as proof that the Holloways were one of those respectable local families people trusted on sight. The invitation made me laugh the first time I saw it. Then it made me furious. So I went. The hotel ballroom glowed like a jewelry box. Crystal stemware. White linen. Brass fixtures catching warm light. Every polished surface seemed designed to flatter the people reflected in it. I wore black trousers, a cream blouse, and the one dark blazer my mother used to say made me look too ambitious to be warm. Elias came with me, not to perform intimidation, but to remind the room that facts had already entered the conversation. My mother saw me first. For the smallest fraction of a second, her smile slipped. It did not crack. It vanished. Then it snapped back into place, bright and brittle and dangerous. Serena, she said loudly, reaching for the wrist of a donor beside her. My daughter is going through a difficult season, but we are praying for healing. There it was. The performance. Softer costume. Same script. My father moved in almost immediately, shoulders tense, voice sharpened by forced restraint. Nina followed with her phone already lifted, hungry for another scene, another angle, another little square of public pain she could crop and upload before midnight. I let them speak. I let my mother imply I was unstable. I let my father say I had bled the family dry. I let Nina mutter that some people destroy everything they touch and then call themselves victims. Around us, conversation thinned. Heads turned. Donors hovered with the tense fascination of people who pretend they hate conflict while leaning closer to hear it better. Only when enough faces had gathered did I speak. Do you want to repeat the part about me owing you $22,000? My mother lifted her chin. Absolutely. I took my phone from my bag, connected it to the portable speaker Elias had handed me outside, and pressed play. My father's own voice tore through the ballroom. She owes us $22,000. The sound landed like glass breaking. Then I placed the speaker down and pulled out the first printed transfer record. This was the emergency payment for the restaurant freezer repair, I said. Another page. This was the seafood supplier deposit you said had to clear before sunrise. Another. This was the city tax payment you told me would keep the restaurant from being fined. Another. This was Nina's tuition balance for the hospitality program. Another. This was the insurance shortfall my mother said would sink the business if I did not cover it that week. I read them one by one, my voice even, my hands steady, the pages crisp in the warm ballroom air. I did not rush. I did not tremble. That was the part that changed the room. Rage people can dismiss. Calm frightens them. Calm sounds like confidence. Calm sounds like proof. My father tried to cut in. I kept reading. My mother said I was embarrassing her. I looked straight at her and answered with a quiet I barely recognized as my own. No. What embarrassed you was being told no by the daughter you trained to keep saving you. The silence after that was enormous. Elias stepped forward then, introduced himself, and stated in the plainest possible language that the public debt claim had been documented, that financial records contradicted my family's narrative, and that additional questions regarding the unauthorized use of my name on business-related documents were under review. He did not threaten. He did not posture. He simply placed reality in the center of the room and let it stand there. A woman from the scholarship committee asked whether my mother had really used my name in donor materials. Another donor asked if the livestream was authentic. A man near the back stared openly at Nina's phone until she lowered it for the first time all evening. My father began talking too fast. My mother tried to laugh and failed. Nina looked around as if she could not understand why the crowd had stopped giving her the reaction she expected. That is the thing about people who build their power on a public script. The moment the audience changes, they shrink right in front of you. I left before the shouting could fully begin. In the hotel corridor, the air felt colder, cleaner, mercifully empty. My legs shook so hard I had to stop beside a marble column and press one hand against it just to stay upright. Elias picked up the folder I had nearly dropped and placed it back into my hands without a word. Only when we reached the parking garage did he speak. That was not revenge, Serena, he said. That was correction. 3 days later, the Harbor Futures Board suspended my mother pending review. 2 restaurant suppliers delayed new credit. Nina lost a local brand partnership she had bragged about for months. My father still kept posting scripture and pride and wounded father speeches online as if volume could stitch a lie back together once the seams had split. But the ground had shifted. They just did not know yet how far it was about to crack. Because while they were still trying to win the story, Elias was pulling records. Chloe was asking sharper questions. And somewhere in that widening circle of consequences, the beautiful polished version of the Holloway family had already started to die. They had dragged me into the light to make me look small. Instead, they had finally given me a stage where the truth could be seen. Exactly 20 days after my father stood outside that restaurant with a microphone and called me a parasite, my phone began vibrating across my desk so hard it sounded alive. I was at work reviewing a route adjustment for a delayed refrigerated shipment when the first call came through. Then another. Then 3 in a row. My father. My mother. Nina. My Aunt Laurel. 2 unknown numbers. Then the restaurant line. Then a lender. Then a number connected to the Harbor Futures Committee. The call stacked so quickly the screen blurred into one long column of panic. I stared at it for 1 second. Then I turned the phone face down beside my keyboard and kept breathing. That was the strangest part of healing. The moment when the chaos finally comes crashing back toward you, and instead of running to contain it, you realize you no longer belong to it. When Elias called from his direct line, I answered. His voice was as calm as ever. "Serena," he said, "the expansion loan has been frozen." The insurance carrier flagged discrepancies in the updated responsibility filings. The scholarship committee is requesting clarification on the donor materials that used your name. Your family is trying to reach you because they need you to confirm the documents were authorized. I closed my eyes. They need me now, I said. Yes, Elias replied. Very much. A hollow laugh rose in my throat and died there. For years, I had been useful in all the ways that leave no room for dignity. Useful when bills were late. Useful when equipment failed. Useful when someone needed a dependable name on an email, a transfer, a promise, a cleanup. But now I was useful in a different way. Not as a daughter. Not as a shield. As the one witness they could no longer control. My work phone rang next. Then my personal phone again. Then a voicemail notification. Then 3 more. By lunch, it felt as if every person who had once ignored my silence had suddenly discovered the sound of my absence. I carried my phone to the break room and set it beside the sink because listening to it rattle against the table made my nerves feel skinned raw. The screen kept lighting up like something begging to be rescued. I did not touch it. An hour later, Nina showed up outside my office building. She was standing near the glass doors with her arms wrapped around herself, no makeup, no bright camera smile, no smug little upward tilt to her mouth. For the first time in weeks, she looked her age. Not polished. Not theatrical. Just young. Frightened. Cornered by a truth she had never expected to turn around and look back at her. I met her in the lobby because I had worked too hard to build a professional life outside my family's reach, and I was not about to let their collapse spill across my office floor. I am not here for Mom, she said immediately. I swear I am not. Dad keeps saying you can fix this if you just tell them the paperwork was approved. Was it no? I said. Her face changed so fast it was painful to watch. Color drained from it. Her mouth opened, then closed again. In that moment, all the easy confidence she had worn during the livestream seemed to peel away like cheap paint in rain. Then Mom lied to us too, she whispered. I held her gaze. Mom did not just lie, Nina. She used me. And you filmed it while she did. The words landed. I saw them land. Nina sat down hard on the lobby bench and pressed both hands over her face. When she finally spoke, her voice was thin and wrecked. I knew they were going to throw your things out, she said. I knew they wanted to make a point. I thought they were forcing you to grow up. I thought you had been hiding money from them or something. I did not know about the loan papers. I did not know about the insurance. I did not know they used your name for the scholarship campaign. There it was. Not innocence. But not authorship either. That is what toxic families do. They hand out roles so early and so often that everyone starts mistaking participation for truth. My father played outrage because outrage made him feel righteous. My mother played martyr because martyrdom let her control the script. Nina played the laughing witness because cruelty felt safer when it came wrapped in belonging. And I had played the dependable one for so long they all forgot I was a person before I was a function. I should have felt victorious. Instead I felt tired. Bone-deep tired. The kind that settles into you when the story you survived finally stops moving fast enough to distract you from what it cost. My phone lit up again. This time it was a voicemail from a number I did not know. I played it once. It was my mother. Serena, please, she said, and her voice sounded scraped raw. They are talking about fraud. They are asking about the sponsorship materials and the insurance forms. We could lose the restaurant. Please call me before this goes any further. We are still your family. I listened to it without blinking. That last sentence should have undone me once. It should have sent me rushing back into the old reflex of rescue, apology, negotiation, self-abandonment disguised as peacekeeping. It did not. Because family is not a magic word. It is not holy just because it is repeated with tears. It does not erase a microphone, a painted suitcase, a public lie, or my name forged onto paper for someone else's survival. I sent the voicemail to Elias. By evening he called with one final recommendation. Neutral ground. Controlled setting. Full documentation. Not reconciliation. Terms. The next morning we met in a conference room at his office under bright, unforgiving lights. No restaurant tables. No hotel donors. No phones lifted for an audience. Just a legal pad, a box of tissues no one touched, and the kind of silence that makes people hear themselves too clearly. My mother looked 10 years older than she had on the night she painted my suitcase. My father had lost the stiff swagger he wore like armor. Nina sat at the far end of the table with her hands twisted together in her lap, staring down as if eye contact itself had become too heavy to carry. Elias laid out the rules first. One person speaks at a time. No interruption. No revision of documented facts. No direct contact with me outside legal channels unless I chose otherwise. My mother began to cry. Before 5 minutes had passed. Not the polished tears she used in public. Not the injured tremble of a woman trying to perform goodness. These were ugly, tired sobs, the kind that come when a person can feel the floor giving way beneath the life they thought appearances would always protect. I was overwhelmed, she said. I was trying to hold everything together. I looked at her and felt something colder than anger. Clarity. You bought paint, I said. Dad used a microphone. Nina filmed. That was not overwhelm. That was a plan. My father tried to jump in with a speech about pressure, debt, reputation, and how fast things had spiraled. Elias cut him off with a single glance and slid the documents across the table. Before this becomes another emotional performance, he said, let us state what is already supported. Serena Holloway did not owe her family the amount publicly claimed. The records show the opposite. Her name appears on business and promotional materials she did not authorize. The defamatory content is documented. The consequences are already in motion. Then everyone looked at me. I had imagined this moment in so many forms. Dramatic. Furious. Cinematic. But when it arrived, I did not need volume. I needed precision. Here's what happens next, I said. You issue a written retraction. Specific. Public. No vague language. No references to misunderstanding or family stress. You state clearly that I contributed financially. You admit I was falsely accused in public. You remove every post, every video, every comment built on that lie. I turned to Nina. You post your own apology. Not because someone wrote it for you. Because you chose to film me being humiliated and you need to say that plainly. Then to both my parents. You repay what you took on a schedule Elias approves. You correct every scholarship and business document that used my name. You do not come to my workplace. You do not contact my landlord if you ever find out where I live. You do not send relatives to pressure me. You do not ask me to save your image, your restaurant, or your version of the story. If any of that happens, Elias proceeds without negotiation. No one spoke for several seconds. Then Nina began crying quietly and said the one thing I had not expected. I was awful to you. That hurt. More than all the speeches. Because for one flicker of a second, I saw the little girl who used to crawl into my bed during storms, and I understood how families break people in layers. First with expectation. Then with fear. Then with habit. By the time the cruelty becomes obvious, everyone inside it has already learned their lines. You were, I said softly. And I am not ready to make that easy. My father asked if I was really willing to let the family fall apart over this. I met his eyes. No, I said. The family fell apart the night you turned my life into a public show. I am just refusing to be buried under it. Something changed in the room then. It was small. Quiet. But final. The old machinery of guilt stopped working. I could see it in their faces. The tactics that had ruled my entire life had reached the end of themselves. By the end of the meeting, my mother agreed to the retraction. My father agreed to stop direct contact. Nina agreed to issue a public apology. They would keep the restaurant, barely, after selling assets and entering repayment plans. They would not lose everything. Just the fantasy that they could destroy me and still call themselves loving. A month later, I moved into a bright apartment above a bookstore on a quiet street where the morning smelled like coffee and paper instead of fear. I was promoted at work. I bought new uniforms. I replaced the bent laptop stand. I still have not found my grandmother's chain. Some losses do not return just because the truth wins. But I returned to myself. And that was the part they never saw coming. If you have ever been made to feel like the burden in a story built on your silence, remember this. Walking away is not cruelty. Telling the truth is not betrayal. Choosing yourself is not selfish. It is survival. If this story stayed with you, tell me in the comments. Would you have forgiven them, or would you have walked away for good? And if you want more stories about betrayal, truth, and the kind of justice that arrives cold and clean, like and subscribe to Still Waters Payback.